Hi, everybody. I'm Candid, Stanisci of CFL Talk. We'll talk some NFL today as well. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download the app, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google, Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV Sticks, Roku Sticks, and all smart TVs 2016 forward. And you can always follow what we do on Candid Stanisci 1030 on YouTube. Joining me as usual is David Morassutti. David, well, it's our first show in a while. It's been a unplanned vacation, but it is what it is, and now we're back. And I guess, what are some of the things in your mind that we haven't talked about up until today, new news wise?
You want to start NFL or do you want to start CFL?
Well, let's go with the NFL to start, because it's gone and it won't be back for a while, and it was the last thing that was going on. So I guess, it would make sense to talk about them first. It isn't going to take that long.
Yeah, so let's start with, obviously, if we want to bring the Canadian angle into it. And this is kind of something a lot of people saw coming, which is that Nathan Rourke looks like he's going to be out of for the time being, he's going to be out of a team going into training camp, mini camp. He's being waived by the New England Patriots, who not only signed a quarterback, but also drafted two other quarterbacks in the NFL draft, one of them being the third overall pick in Drake May. So a lot of people kind of put two and two together and saying that Nathan Rourke's time in New England looks like it was going to be coming to an end, and the team told him he was going to be waived. Again, it was kind of expected. New coaching staff, kind of a new direction. That seemed to be likely. Where that puts him, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a team maybe willing to give him a spot in camp, and now you got CFL people wondering if this means a return for him. He's going to obviously exhaust every NFL opportunity before he considers a return to the CFL, but it's not good for Nathan Rourke right now. Obviously, when he was picked off waivers by New England, that obviously wasn't a great prospect for him, because in Jacksonville, at least he was getting himself in a position where he was going to be developing in a good system.
Does he go back to Jacksonville?
I don't think so, because they also made some additions to the quarterback room as well. They traded, actually, funny enough, they traded for the Patriots starter, Mac Jones. So they have Mac Jones competing for the backup. I'm sure they've also drafted another quarterback. They have a lot of quarterbacks on their roster. So I don't think Jacksonville would be the place. You'd have to look for another situation again with a team that needs a third quarterback who has a starter. They have a backup, but they don't really have anyone as that third guy. That's where he's going to have to go and look for, unfortunately. It's, again, one of those things where he was already having to go uphill to start his journey, right? He's not like a lot of these other quarterbacks that come in and teams don't have this preconceived notion about who he is and what he's capable of doing.
It's going to come down to, he's going to get a job where some bad news happens, whether it be quarterbacks that get injured or quarterbacks that don't rise up,
Right.
raise questions that they're good enough for the team. So he's now in that situation where he's going to fill a spot that gets emptied for whatever reason. Man, I'm dying to see what he looks like. We saw a tiny little sample in an exhibition game, and he made a great play. It would just be really nice to see him, play a game. I guess the best hope he's got is really not anything in particular. It's wide open. Like it could come from anywhere. The next opportunity, I mean.
No, exactly, right. And so I can't personally think right now where that next step will be for him. I'd have to look around the league to see which team has a potential opening for him. I can't think of one off the top of my head. It's usually going to be a team that values Canadian players. Like, if I'm being honest, looking at staffs, like the Chargers are usually a team that go after Canadians. The Cardinals are another team. The Bills, I mean, Bills would be an interesting team.
Minnesota's pretty good that way too.
Minnesota's another. Yep, that's another team. That's a team that's very quarterback needy, in my opinion. They're not exactly flush with a lot of talent. Well, they're not flush with a lot of depth there. I will say, right? Easy depth to find. Denver's a team that doesn't really have a great quarterback rooms. I mean, may not be the best spot for him
Wow.
in terms of,
Oh, wait.
but he might have a chance there. I think the Raiders are another team too that were looking to get a quarterback, couldn't find a quarterback. So, like, if again, I could find a team in every single division that he could go to. My Cowboys could definitely could use another quarterback in the room there. Um, I mean, if I look, San Francisco, I doubt it. I don't think they really have. They did lose Sam Darnold, so they may have elevated guys. So that's another potential offering there. But yeah, I'm just looking at the Bills. They do have a third quarterback. They don't really have a fourth guy, right? That could be an option there. The Dolphins have three guys that I think will be easy for pretty good competition there. Denver does have four quarterbacks, all not so great. So maybe just leave that one there. I actually do think the Raiders would have made a lot of sense, but they also have added some quarterbacks that makes it a little tougher to see. So there's a lot of question marks there, unfortunately. But I do think that he will find a spot, even if just to get him an opportunity to show what he can do.
Yeah, and well, there's. I'm just again, I repeat, I'm dying to see what he looks like in a situation where he's actually getting a chance to show what he can do, and I can't imagine how he must feel.
Well, I'm sure that it's
Oh,
anytime you get let go, I'm sure you're feeling quite down on yourself. But again, he needs to understand that there's going to be this, preconceived notion about him, and he has to battle through that. Right? Canadian quarterbacks don't get the same value, the same belief that other quarterbacks in other countries get.
not even in Canada,
No,
right?
this is
Not even here. So I mean, that's well, he could become if things persist, the way they're developing, way everything's unfolding. He'll be a good Labor Day acquisition for a CFL team.
mhm.
Around the time the NFL starts, dumping guys, and when the CFL has a very attentive view of what's going on in the NFL, that could be a window for him to. I don't think it. I agree with you, and it sounds like you're saying he's not really looking for a spot in the CFL for now. He's got up. His opportunities haven't dried up. All that's happened is that an opportunity dried up where he was at. And he's suffering the same concern that every quarterback that doesn't have a starting job, that they all have, right? And that's tough in itself to be, not having a position. But I just love to see him. I hope he lands soon enough that he gets an opportunity with somebody to give us some more time at quarterback in the exhibition season.
Well, that's it, right? And one thing that was said during the draft that might hurt, I mean, not going to hurt him this year, but hurt guys like Rourke in future years, is the Goodell kind of saying, "I find the preseason pointless." And he wants to cut down the preseason schedule in order to add to the regular season, right? And
Hmm.
my thought process was, well, players don't like playing too many regular season games because of the wear and tear it puts on them. And okay, some people are like, well, then short the preseason. Big time players, stars players don't play in the preseason anyways. So I don't get, like, they may play a quarter in the preseason. So I don't get that belief either. But that's another factor I think that's gonna if this NFL decides to cut down and preseason schedule, the players who suffer the most out of it are the ones that are fighting to make a spot out of camp.
And to your point, extending your point a little bit further, it's you're trading an exhibition game ticket for a regular season ticket.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to be the guy that says the NFL's after money.
And regular season TV versus exhibition TV means you can sell another game to another network.
Absolutely. What we've learned, I guess, what have we learned? This is a great transition, actually, because what have we learned when the CFL tried doing less exhibition games? I think we learned that players weren't ready to play, and the regular season looked like a preseason at the beginning of the year. We've had that. We've seen that happen. We've also seen that a rash of injuries happen because players aren't ramping up to the regular season. It's a ramp up situation. That's what the exhibition schedule is all about. And you've got players who aren't with the team or don't have contracts with the team or didn't have a contract. They're here to show what they can do. We're going to have less of that. I don't know. I think the NFL though is a big enough league, and they work so hard, and it's such a big business. I don't think it'll matter, David. Bottom line, I don't think it'll matter. It'll be a little bit of problem, the ones that I expressed, but a better solution as far as more money to the league.
Well, that's it too. It's always really about that bottom line. Why do you think the NFL was kind of revolutionary in this, and other leagues have kind of fallen behind in this, where they don't sell the games exclusively to one partner. They have Fox, NBC, ABC, CBS, Amazon,
streaming,
5 networks.
Apple.
I guarantee you'll find another one day. But you got these networks all pushing for the NFL product because the viewership that the NFL gets is insane. Insane. So when people say, why are we having these Thursday night games? Money. Money and views. That's what it is. People still watch, even if it's the most terrible matchup on the planet, people will still watch because the NFL product is too tough to ignore.
Yeah, a great company, if we can put it that way. They're definitely a success story, and I'm looking forward to next NFL season. I'm looking forward in the hopes that I'm going to see Nathan Rourke make it to the NFL. And I really want to see him play. I want to really see him play in the NFL format. If not, coming to the Canadian, I guess to close this, he would be a very, very attractive get for every team. And I don't know. Do you think there's a Canadian Football League team that wouldn't be interested in his services?
Oh, what's the one position every team wish? You know which team? 2 teams I can think of.
I have one in mind.
2 teams off the top of my head that should be running, sprinting to go get a Nathan Rourke. That's Calgary and Ottawa.
And I would put undertones of the Toronto Argonauts there.
I've seen those ones too. That one could potentially as well. I don't know if you saw the comments Nathan Rourke had made.
He kind of yeah. Go ahead, tell the audience.
Yeah, so we all know the issue that Child Kelly is dealing with, right, and the Argonauts are dealing with right now. And Nathan Rourke went on social media, and he basically gave his opinion on it, and he didn't just slam the team; he slammed the CFL for not handling the situation the way he thought it should have been handled. And look, I don't begrudge him for doing it. He's clearly somebody that's respected when it comes to his opinion. At the same time, I think it also goes to show maybe he doesn't he doesn't believe he'll be looking for a CFL job right away. But I don't think a team
or
is.
an NFL job. I mean, he hurt his chances with that statement. I'm sorry for interrupting you, David.
I think
I think that was a negative thing for him to do, and not that he doesn't or shouldn't have an opinion.
yeah,
God
that's
bless him. He has an opinion. Good for him. But in a situation that still hasn't evolved, and there still isn't anything solid to report. In other words, the CFL hasn't finished its investigation. The legal thing hasn't happened. We're talking about speculation here, and for a guy who's trying to get on an NFL team, and the NFL has dealt with this kind of stuff, and we know how they react when players try throwing justice out, as an opinion.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and he was commenting on an Arash Madani post about the fact that people around the league and also on the team have voiced concerns that that things haven't been done to their, I guess, to the speed in which they were looking for. Which, I mean, I haven't really spoken a lot about this. I've spoken with some people off the record about it. There's a lot of frustration about it, without a doubt. You don't like to see your team being put in a legal situation, but I always had to remind people that this is a civil situation, like more of an employment situation. It's not a criminal situation. I think people need to recognize the difference between the two. And look, I'm not minimizing what the former Argos coach is going through. I think, you know what, she definitely feels like she was wronged. Kelly, I will say his behavior, on social media gets me a little concerned sometimes. His attitude gets me a little concerned sometimes, but he's got every right to post what he wants and all those things. At the same time, you got to be very careful. You can only say what you know, not what you think, but what is out there, right? Like I always appreciate why am I blanking on his name right now? The gentleman
McCarthy.
who put out the original story, I should say. Here, I'll look it up right now. Give me 2 seconds. Rick Westhead. I had Rick in my head.
Oh, yeah,
Rick Westhead. I give him a lot of credit. He's handled a lot of these situations. He's kind of become the go-to guy. He is very careful.
Legal sports reporter.
Okay, he's only reporting what he knows about this situation. He's not putting out an opinion. He's just reporting what's out there. And we now know the Argos have also put out their court filings, and so has Chad Kelly. This is something that's, again, ladies and gentlemen, when you get the courts involved, two issues here. If the Argos were to do what the fans have been calling for, especially fans from other teams, to let Kelly go or suspend Morrow, then you give more credibility to that lawsuit, right?
Yeah.
What they're doing right now, and it's purposely being done, they're holding him from any public appearances, right? Because that's just a PR move. But if you're asking why the league, I mean, it's up to the league to make their own determination on that. It's not about the Argos. The Argos are not going to put Kelly on the suspended list. They are doing what they're doing right now, which is the smart thing, which is we're not going to put him in the public light. And we have to defend ourselves because they're also named in the lawsuit. It's one thing if Kelly is alone being named in the lawsuit, but because the Argos and MLSC are being named in this lawsuit, they have to be very careful with how they handle the situation. I don't know how people are not understanding that. I understand that it's not a great situation and the way it's being laid out by the former coach. I totally understand that. But I can clearly see why it's where it is right now. Now, in the CFL's case about their investigation, again, I don't know how long an investigation like this takes. I venture to guess it takes a few months to gather up all the witness statements that they need and putting together their own characterization of the facts. But if you expected this to be done within a week, even a month, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know if there's a mandate to get it done by a certain time. We don't know if the CFL has put themselves under that sort of deadline. But I will say the longer this drags out, the tougher it's going to be for the league to ignore, the more it becomes a story. The reason why it hasn't become more of a story, frankly, is because the media don't cover the Argos. There's only two entities reporting on this: 3Down Nation and TSN, and the Canadian press. And that's where everybody's getting their stuff is from the Canadian press, obviously. But the Canadian press isn't doing daily coverage on this. No one else is doing daily coverage on this because there's really nothing daily to report on.
Well, give us a short description of what the beef is. Just a short description of what the beef is.
So the former coach is suing Kelly for $50,000 for violating the human rights code for harassment in the workplace.
Right.
So she is alleging that Kelly was harassing her, right? And there was a couple of incidents that were named in the lawsuit. One being she was asked not to run a certain workout. I think it was a yoga class because Kelly was going to be there. There was a reported blow up between Kelly and the coach, and she was asked not to go home. She then presented this issue to management, namely John Murphy and the head of all the athletic trainers, and they didn't really escalate it to the way that probably a situation like that should have been. So then her contract wasn't renewed, which she is deeming to be a wrongful dismissal, because coaches, we all know, most of the coaching staff. Now, I'm not talking about like head coaches, defense coordinators. I'm talking about strength and conditioning coaches, things like that. They're usually on a year by year contract, right? It's kind of a way for organizations to have to not pay out certain things when you're deeming one's a contract employee versus a full-time employee, right? There's just different ways of labeling it. So her contract wasn't renewed, so she's suing the Argos for wrongful dismissal, and she's suing Kelly for harassment, and that's where we're at right now.
So would it be fair to say there's no hint of any physical abuse? We haven't heard a hint of that.
No.
We haven't heard a hint of sexual abuse. So
no, but we heard that potentially there were some inappropriate remarks made. Not obviously nothing.
Want to have a date kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and so there's some. That's where the conflict. That's where the two statements are kind of crashing against each other. Or what's the word I'm looking for here? They're kind of bouncing off each other a little bit. That one saying one thing and one saying contradicting. They're contradicting each other. The events,
right? So if that is not sexual, but
it's not like that's
we're accustomed to. What I'm trying to establish here, the intensity of the situation is defined by what's being, at least as far as we know, what's being said. The worst it gets, in as far as some of the situations we've seen, not only in sports but in life, right? Far more intense than this. Does not mean it doesn't deserve our attention. It does not mean that this subject shouldn't be looked into. It does not mean that she has no rights, but the rights she has, I think, are defined by the human rights code that she's claiming has been contravened. So that's getting into the weeds now. Now we're getting into the weeds, and maybe that's why the definitive problem here. There's a lot of gray area, right? And as long as we don't attach previous experiences with athletes and or business people This is going to take as long as this situation takes. And we've been through this enough times, David, that organizations, leagues have really been burned when they haven't looked into a situation with the kind of the kind of immediacy, right?
Right.
Intensity and an understanding of who's been hurt here, and let's make sure that they're not, that their hurt ends as quick as possible. And their rights in this case, we know that to be the issue, that their rights are basically she's made whole and her rights are respected.
Mhm.
But this is a very I don't want to call it a low level problem, because there are no problems that are low level.
No.
But we can say this is not as serious as some of the stuff we've seen in the past, right? So but I guess because it isn't something. I don't think it's something hard and fast to expect it to come out and be resolved quickly. This is basically a real he said she said, and now you got to start finding out what can be proven, right? Because even though in cases like this, the accusation, a lot of times, this is the unusual thing about this accusation, it's not causing a lot of problems other than the reaction the Argos have made that you're talking about, which is not putting him out there. And him being the quarterback, Kelly, posting stuff about it. This is a situation that I think is going to need some time, because the evidence required to make a decision, David, is pretty much he said, she said, it sounds like to me, unless they can find witnesses, right? To nail this thing down as to where the wrong is.
And that's where the CFL is going. I think the misstep probably from the Argos case is that it seemed like it kind of got brushed aside and nothing was really done for it. I'm a little surprised that the coach didn't go to the CFL. You would think that the CFL would have some measure of
A
support for
protocol.
staff,
Yep.
a
And a protocol.
protocol, and I'm pretty sure they do. I'm pretty sure it's been noted. I'm not blaming the coach by any stretch of the matter. I'm not saying that it was her fault. I'm just wondering why that wasn't done. In that regard, probably would have probably helped her in some regard in that situation. But I think that's the misstep there from the Argos, is that it seemed to kind of get brushed aside, and then they obviously are letting this coach go, and kind of were maybe hoping that this would kind of diffuse the whole situation. So there's that part there, but at the same time, we have come to see that a lot of these situations don't ever get handled the right way. But obviously, you gotta, in the Argos case, they're probably also gathering what was done. What let's
Yeah.
just say that,
What were the Argo protocols that
yeah,
should have been followed?
exactly,
Um,
and that's
and
probably what MLSC don't get me wrong, they do not want this to be a PR issue, because if this gets elevated to the point where it's proven that the Argos mismanaged it, MLSC is not going to want this to be a story. They're going to want to figure out why this was handled the way it was.
Well, making it right, I find in these situations that you end up with this where we're at right now, right, where there's a lack of knowledge, and as far as there's a lack of evidence, and so what happens is you have one side going, well, we're not going to admit to something we didn't do, right, and you have the other side saying, well, you should admit to what you did, when we really don't know what happened. See, this is the thing about this situation is, if there were witnesses to this, I think we may have heard about it sooner. Do you know what I mean? Like, this seems to be a very gray area, and she's more than, the coach is more than within her rights to establish what her rights are within, because every company more and more they have human resources. It's always been around. It's become more integrated into the workplace, and in this case, it'll be the CFL offices, the coaching staffs, and let's be honest here. When you have a woman doing a job in a place where mostly men are the people that she works with, it's a possible minefield, right? I think. I'm not saying it's not possible. Of course it's possible. But, it's a tough situation.
Hmm. No, I totally, I no, I totally agree. Where this is kind of the message that a lot of people I've been talking to and have seen on social media have expressed their concerns about the situation. And this was Nathan Rourke's idea behind it too. In that, what was done? What's the support? What type of message is this showing? Because we constantly hear, why don't females get involved in sports, whether it's on the media side, whether it's within organizations. It's because they feel that they're in a constant battle because it's a male dominated field, right? What did the CFL come out with years ago? Diversity is our strength. That
And
doesn't just mean
the women that are being brought into
they're
foot.
doing programs. They're announcing about women that are working in front offices, and you have something like this come about. That's not a good look for the CFL. So I totally get also the CFL should also put a little bit of urgency, because the longer this goes on, more people are going to start asking questions. They can't just hope that the story dies down, because it's not going to. Because
Right?
guess what? Chad Kelly was the MOP. We're
Yeah.
not talking about a player that you can easily just cast aside. This is a player that's the highest paid quarterback in the league, won the MOP. There's a lot of cachet behind him, and it could get some attention down south too if things go wayside here as well.
Well, you know what's going to happen with the American press? They're going to dig into what they knew about him last, and then they're going to
Yep.
pick up from there and then move on from there. Yeah, that's the issue here, and unfortunately, that's what happens when, I'm not saying anything other than when you have a guy who has a reputation, it makes it easier to accuse him of something. Not because she would do that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that he has some skeletons in his closet that have been opened up, right? So, and I don't think that's fair either. As fair as we need to be to the coach, and we need to be extremely fair where justice is served here and HR it performs the way it should. We also can't, assume because Kelly has a history with doing some stuff that he shouldn't have done, which is a matter of public record now, that this is just an extension of all that. um you know I think, well, my final comment on this, and then you can have the rest, is that they gotta figure out what's going on, and eventually they're going to have to deal with it, because we're getting closer and closer to reporters having access to players, and then you're going to have to say, no, you can't talk to him, and that doesn't sit well with reporters. We've seen how that works, David.
Yeah, no, this is definitely not something that can, like, training camp opens this week.
Right.
They don't want this to be a story in training camp, right? It's going to be a story. We don't want it to be the story.
Well, at any moment, today, tomorrow, a week, 2 weeks, the CFL is going to come down with their judgment, and the CFL is going to say this is what happened, and they'll have their opinion, and then MLSC or the Argonauts or both will have their reaction to it, which basically will say, and I don't guarantee this, but it's an educated guess on my part, whatever the league said, we're going to respect that, and we're going to deal with it from that perspective. And the league has told us this, and that's what we're going to do. And here's what we're also going to do, because we're MLSC and the Argos. That's what's going to happen here. And now it's just a question how we get to what exactly is the result of the investigation. That's all, we already know what's going to happen regardless. This is something that isn't the first time we've seen this kind of stuff happen, and there are going to have to be, and I think we all expect that there need to be corrective measures. There needs to be assurances there were opportunities for the coach to do things that maybe they didn't take, or they waited too long, or maybe, there wasn't a place for her to be heard in an appropriate manner. We're going to find all that out.
Yeah.
And it'll be for the best down the road, folks. It's one of the things that we've got to deal with in life. That's all there is to it. We can't hide from it anymore. Not the MLSC, not the Argos, not you, not I, and not Kelly. But in Kelly's place, I think he'd be better served if he didn't say anything. It doesn't mean that he's admitting guilt by not saying anything. It just means let the investigation happen the best way possible with the experience that the CFL has had in some situations already. MLSC has had them. The Argos have had them. So, let's let the best part of their experience handle this situation. And let's get to what happened and what we're going to do about it. That's all I'm waiting for. That's the way I see this situation.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong.
So we'll leave it there, and we'll just a little mention about the NFL because it relates to the Canadian Football League. A great Canadian Rookie of the Year is getting his shot in the NFL. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the stories I wanted to break. I wanted to get done before the the NFL draft. We know that Quintez Stiggers had probably one of the most unique journeys to professional football I've ever seen. I don't know if you may have seen some during your times covering the league, but obviously for those who don't know the story, Quintez Stiggers did not attend college football because COVID wiped out the college football season. His father passed away after a car accident, so he had no desire to play football again. His mother signs him up to play in the Fan Control Football League, which is it's a different type of league than we're kind of accustomed to watching. Goes there, coach sends tape to the Argos, say you may want to consider this guy in the CFL. The Argos convince him to come to the CFL. He ends up winning Rookie of the Year despite being 21 years old when he was in Toronto, had no college football experience, had to make him pretty much deal with the whole moving up to a new country on his own. His play, and then at the end of the year, I asked Mike Hogan, I said, so which team is looking to sign him? He's like, he's not going to get signed. He's going to the NFL draft. Lo and behold, I talked to him just before the draft. He said, he had quite a few teams talk to him. He's really excited about the whole process. He was nervous because he knew he was going to go, but he didn't know when. He was likely expecting it on the last day. 5th round, the New York Jets call his name. So Quintez Stiggers is now a member of the New York Jets. Out of all the teams that he could have gone to as a defensive player, it's probably one of the top ones. They have a great defense, they have one of the better cornerbacks in the league in Sauce Gardner. That's going to really help him kind of develop as a football player. They really liked that pick, although he went 2 picks after my Cowboys picked another cornerback. Very disappointed that I messaged Quintez. I said, good luck. We're gonna keep following your journey there. So just an unbelievable story. This is someone that's dealt with heartbreak, tragedy, didn't expect to ever play football again, and now he is on an NFL team. Gonna be watching the Jets a lot closer this year. I always watch the Jets closely for other reasons. They're just not a good football team. They've had a lot of bad luck their way. But he is going on a
quarterback too.
That's a Jets team that's going to be a very interesting team to watch this year, and he's going to play. Like, you don't pick. I know a 5th round pick. Some people think that's what can you really expect? The guy who set an NFL record for interceptions in a year, I think, or interception for touchdowns, Deron Bland, who plays for the Cowboys, was a 5th round pick. Where he gets drafted, sometimes in the NFL, isn't the Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant. I always tell people, it doesn't matter where you get drafted, just get yourself drafted, get yourself in the room, and make an impression. That's what he did.
Yeah, but a fifth round pick is not anything to sneeze at.
No, not at
That
all.
that's a pick. That's a dedicated pick.
Yes.
You know, he's look. He played professional football. He didn't get a chance to play college football. He had a chance to play professional football in the Canadian Football League, which the NFL is not going to look at the Canadian Football League. Please, CFL fans, don't attack me for saying this. It's not any less than college football. There's going to be people out there that are going to be on the opposite side of what I'm worried about. He is a great player, has the instincts that he has. He has film, and the league has film on the instincts that he has. And the guy was the best rookie in the Canadian Football League. If that doesn't at least get you some attention, we know that the NFL watches what's going on in the Canadian Football League, and we know that a top player in the Canadian Football League is going to be seen by the NFL, and someone's going to take a flyer on him, and they did. And the Jets are going to be lucky to have him because this kid is a quick study, a quick learner.
Yeah.
I don't think there's, he's one step ahead of college players.
I think so. And let's not forget, what is one? I would say the third hardest position in the CFL. Hardest is quarterback. Second hardest is offensive line, in my opinion. Third hardest position, cornerback. You are going up against receivers who have a running start.
Absolutely.
And he was phenomenal for the Argos. And he wasn't even a starter, right? He was only in a starting position because of injuries to that Argos backfield.
And he knows a lot about different positions because of the way the Toronto Argonauts coach and the way they assign their defensive system. So, he's got a nice little education that he can go there with. I don't think he's going to disappoint them. I really don't. Do I think he'll start? Not immediately, but the same thing's going to happen in the NFL that happened in the Canadian Football League and the Toronto Argonauts. His turn's going to come up, and he's not going to let go. He's going to rise to the occasion. This is a guy who was denied an opportunity to be in the NFL at a point in his life, and then all of a sudden had a chance in college football too as well, and then had a chance. And we know, being in his position, it wouldn't be hard to believe that he really appreciates any opportunity. And I know in talking to him, I got that distinct impression that he always had the confidence. He didn't know he'd get an opportunity. So once he got that opportunity, he took advantage. He had to hope a lot more than a lot of college players, because when a college player gets drafted, they're coming in there with X amount of, sachet, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. This guy didn't have any with the Argos, and he doesn't really have any, because he's a CFL player. I'm not saying that's going to be a derogatory thing against him or a negative, but I am going to say that, he didn't come out of college football, and he's going to be the unicorn that everybody's wondering what's going to happen. And I'm telling you, your story is only the first of many stories that are going to come out from this guy, because I can see a lot of football writers interested in this story.
Yeah, it's already started.
Going to New York and then going to New York.
Oh, I know. It's like you could not have picked one of the bigger media markets, right? And let's not forget, the New York Jets get their fair coverage because of so who's on the quarterback of the team.
Yeah.
People are going to be watching games, and if he has a good game, if he makes a big play, that story's going to come out. That story is going to be prevalent. It's one of the more unique stories. It's a draft story. We've heard. You know what? I will say this: there are a lot of players who come in the draft, and they always get highlighted about their struggles that they've gone through and things like that. Right? The backstory. This one here is one that, yeah, you could definitely say is,
a quarterback story.
Yeah.
Good for him. It's I really, we enjoy. I had a chance to be standing a couple of feet from him when he won the, when he won the Rookie of the Year. I had the pleasure of standing there and right right in front of him and watching him, you know, talk about his dad, as you said, that passed away. You know, it's just a heartwarming story, and it's one that almost, I think, no offense to you, David, please don't take this as an insult. It writes itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great story. Okay, let's move on to let's stick with the Argos for a second, and let's stick with the defense. So they finally decided what their defensive coordination is going to look like.
Yeah, so kind of what many were expecting, but maybe not to this degree. They are going with the defensive coordinator by committee approach. So they somebody who I think is long deserving of a promotion. That's Kevin Iben, who has been the linebacker coach in Toronto for quite a long time. Like he's been with the team for 8 seasons as a coach. So you kind of, and then so he'll be kind of the defensive coordinator, also get the linebackers, and then you got William Fields, who I've heard a lot of great things about. Does a lot of work for the secondary, so they're gonna kind of go at it as a co-op. They're both gonna work on the together. I would assume the way that this is going to work is one's going to be calling plays from above and one's going to be down on the field working with the players. It's actually not a terrible system. I know some people are probably like, this is very unusual for a team to have two coordinators, right? You don't see that. You have teams who have a coordinator, and you have another one who's a defensive assistant and things like that. It's just that's how the Argos are going to go about it. We had an inkling that it was going to be internal, and I think it's the right move for a team that wants to keep that continuity. They want to keep what was going on the last few years together. I would assume that Kevin Iben would be the guy who has more of a say of sorry, who's kind of maybe viewed at because he's been with this defense the longest. But it'll be interesting to see how it works.
Yes, and good luck to them. And good luck
Yes,
to the Argos. They lost a pretty good
they
coach.
did.
And so Saskatchewan's gain is Toronto's loss. Um, let's talk a little bit about how quickly players that have been drafted have been signed. This has been a good year for the draft.
Yeah, you know what? It was, and in a lot of ways, everyone was asking me, "Oh, who's going to be the number one pick? Who's going to be the number one pick?" I have no idea. There's a lot of players that could be the first overall pick, and maybe makes it a little bit harder for teams to kind of this league to um, for the league to say, who you're going to kind of build your draft around, but. No, we heard a lot of good things about this draft class. A lot of talented players. Obviously, Edmonton picks. Just gonna say Joel Dublanko, who's the first overall pick. They went linebacker there. It wasn't, and this was, I think, a draft that I think we're starting to see the trend change a little bit here. How many years has it been offensive lineman, offensive lineman, offensive lineman? That's changing.
It's
Now you're
changed
going
the
skill
past couple years.
positions.
Skill positions, yep. Skill positions are really rising up in the draft now.
They really are. A lot of receivers. I think. I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember the top 10 off the top of my head, not or the top 9. It's not really coming to me, right away.
Well, generally speaking, we don't have a lot of time to get into details.
I'll say this: out of the top 9, there was a run of linemen later in the draft, but four of the 9 picks were offensive linemen.
Absolutely.
One receiver, 2 receivers, a defensive back, and 2 linebackers.
Absolutely.
Pretty good variety.
Yeah, and they've done a marvelous job, the players, in improving, and we're better for it. The Canadian Football League's better for it. and the skill players that are coming up. We're seeing young players impacting, as we saw last year. One of the Twins, won the best Canadian player. So, but we've got a great opportunity here to see some great football. I look forward to talking about more football, and also now that the training camp has started, we can really start seriously talking about football. Looking
Yes, we
forward
can.
to it.
Definitely.
Thanks for doing this, buddy. I really appreciate it.
Glad to be back.
Yep, for sure. Okay, for David Morassutti, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching CFL Talk, airing live Mondays at 4 p.m. This show can also be heard the Spanglish World Radio Network for CFL Talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer. Check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download, and live it. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to check out Candid Frank Stanisci 1030 on YouTube. Ciao for now.